Hello, hello. Happy Thursday. Let me make sure we're going live on this other screen as well, and then we'll get started. Go live. Awesome. Hello there. Happy Thursday. We are here for a little intro to forensic accounting and get some details. Purse Strings brings financial education every Thursday, and we bring on our live professionals. All this month, we are talking about financially surviving a divorce, which we know is a heavy topic, but is so important for so many women. So we're excited to get this education out there. Don't be afraid to share it with a friend. And so then we have all our Purse Strings approved professionals willing, ready, and able to serve you. And Tracy Coenen is one of them. So welcome, Tracy.
Thanks for having me today, Maggie.
Of course. I am excited to jump in. But before we get started, could you give a little intro of yourself?
Sure. I'm a forensic accountant, and quite simply, that means that I find money for people. So I do fraud investigations, and some of my work is in the corporate realm, and some of it is in the divorce realm. The thing is that when people are going to be on the hook for paying money, sometimes they make money disappear. And so I'm there to help find that money. So that's why I like to say that I find money for people.
It must be just such an interesting job day in, day out, I feel like. But the stories you probably hear are amazing.
It is super interesting. I mean, numbers aren't everyone's thing. And I know that a lot of people would say, sitting and digging into detailed numbers all day long would drive them crazy. But for me,
Right.
It's super interesting because it's putting together a puzzle. And there is a lot of detailed work, and it can get long and it can get tiring. But when I find that proof of the fraud, it's super exciting for me. So the reward is there at the end.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to get through some of these questions today so people can learn a little bit more. And so the first one is, when going through this divorce, what are some common red flags of fraud that might be seen in a marriage?
Awesome question. So let's just set the stage first about red flags. What are red flags of fraud? So when you're talking divorce, those are warning signs that money is being hidden or spent inappropriately. And so the red flags aren't proof yet of fraud, but they are those warning signs. So I'm looking, there's all sorts of red flags. I've got lengthy lists of them, but some of the most common ones that I'm seeing are, your spouse hiding documents. Maybe, for example, maybe your bank statement came in the mail to the house every month. All of a sudden it stopped coming. You asked your husband, I haven't seen a bank statement in a couple of months. Where is it? And he says, don't worry about it. I'm taking care of it, or actively obstructs you from getting it or seeing it. That's a warning sign to me that there might be something going on with your money.
Yeah.
Another big one that I see is just in general being secretive about finances. So maybe spending money on things that your spouse isn't telling you about, or, a lot of spouses have agreements between them saying, any purchase over X dollars, we will talk about before we make that.
Right.
Your spouse is making those purchases, hiding them, not telling you about them beforehand or even afterwards. That's a problem to me. And then a third big one that I unfortunately see is spouses who are involved in affairs. Typically, very often when there's an affair, there's also shenanigans with the money. So those are the types of things I'm looking for. And, changes in behavior as it relates to the money are a really great red flag to be on the lookout for. And I always tell my clients to trust their gut. If you see some of these things and it's unusual behavior for your spouse, trust your gut, assume that something is wrong, and take those steps to look further.
Yeah, those seem like some activities that are just, definitely raise red flags. I mean, if we can't share it, then there must be something up. So yeah, definitely I can see how that would raise a flag or two. So what if you don't know for sure if it's fraud and you just kind of suspect it? You don't want to cause a whole uproar and then have it all be false almost.
Well, you don't have to cause an uproar, but asking for information shouldn't cause an uproar. So I do say to my clients, first of all, like I said, trust your gut. If you think something is wrong, you know your husband, you know what's been going on in your marriage, you know what your standard practices have always been around money. So trust that if you think that something is wrong, that you should look further into it. And then start asking for information. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It doesn't have to be ugly. It doesn't have to be an uproar. but start getting those bank statements and credit card statements and start looking at them to see if there's any proof of money being spent inappropriately, or maybe there's, cash withdrawal of $5,000 that your husband can't account for. He can't tell you where that money went. It's all about starting to seek information and just asking those questions. And I know that there are a lot of women who will say, it will cause an uproar. If I even ask my husband about this, it will cause an uproar. And that's a really unfortunate situation to be in. But I'll push you that you do have to start asking the questions, because you do need to get the information.
Yeah. And after a while, I mean, if that involves your finances, it really affects you. So we do have to, step in, even though it's not the number one thing we want to do is go chase down bank statements, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes to protect yourself.
Right.
So, I mean, a lot of women do say, their husband is controlling or he's a narcissist. And they just have not been shown their financial stuff. What can you do?
Again, if your husband is controlling and not letting you see stuff, that's kind of exactly why you need to see it. And so, you can try to push for access to those documents, try to get online access to it. Here's a tip. If your name is on a bank account or on a credit card, you can legally access them and you don't need your husband's permission to get it. So if your name's on that bank account, but he's for whatever reason shut you out of seeing the statements, shut you out of online access, go directly to your bank and get access through them. You have that legally. Okay. If your name isn't on an account, so in some families, that main bank account maybe only has the husband's name on it because that's the way they've always done it. Then you're going to need to talk to your attorney and get access to those statements through the legal system. So your attorney can subpoena the bank, get copies directly from the bank of those bank statements. And
it sounds like a process.
It is a process, and there's sometimes some conflict involved. One of the things that I see women doing sometimes is they kind of want to race through this divorce process. Let's just get it over with.
Rip off the Band-Aid, do it as fast as you can.
You're suffering. You want to move on. You want to start your new life. Divorce is difficult enough without prolonging the process. The thing is, I don't want them leaving money on the table, right? Everyone wants that next chapter to begin, and I agree, but let's slow down and let's look at the numbers. Let's not agree to a settlement until you have all of the information, because guess what? Once your divorce is closed and you've signed that settlement, it is really hard to reopen that divorce. I know people say sometimes, oh, if we find something later, we can just reopen it. It's really hard and really expensive to reopen it. So I want you to have that information before you sign your divorce agreement.
Yeah, that's so important. And it is not even the time, but the money that goes back into it. Is it almost worth it in the end? Which is, something else you have to weigh.
Well, right. Divorces are so expensive. I mean, your attorney charges you for every 10th of an hour that they spend on your case, and rightfully so. Their time is important. Their time is valuable, but the fees escalate so quickly. And so I know that people are really money conscious when it comes to that, as they should be. But what we don't want to do is, again, leave money on the table, not look into really important issues like, where did our money go?
Yes, exactly. And so as much as you want business, you don't always want people to hire you right away, because it's not always the best to their benefit, and they need to get some paperwork to really look over first, to kind of assess and see if those red flags are there. Do you have any tools to help with that?
Of course I do. So as you know, I've been working as a forensic accountant for more than 25 years, and it's expensive to have me involved in a divorce. I mean, it's easily a $10,000 deposit to just get started. And I know that many people in the process of divorce don't have that kind of money to put down, especially if they're in a situation where they have some suspicions about the money, but they don't yet have any concrete proof. And it's like, do I, roll the dice and spend $10,000 not knowing what I'll find? And so I wanted an option for people who were in that position. What could they do on their own to sort of figure some things out? So I came up with the Divorce Money Guide, which is my 10-step online handbook that takes people through that financial part of their divorce. What is financial discovery? How do you evaluate some of these red flags of fraud? What financial documents do you need, like those bank statements and income tax returns? How do you get them, and what do you do with them? So really trying to empower women who are in the process of divorce to get some of that knowledge about the finances on their own before they put down that big chunk of money for a forensic accountant.
Yeah. And, when I looked at it, it was great overview of just all the things you would need, no matter if you're going to go to a CDFA or go to a forensic accountant or go to an attorney. It's a great launching point because either way, in part of your divorce, you're going to need to know where the money's at, and have part of that conversation.
Well, I think, the divorce money guide was really created specifically for when people have suspicions about what's happened to the money. But incorporated in that is getting all your financial documents for the financial discovery process so that you can turn those over to your attorney versus paying your attorney hourly to try to get your bank statements, try to sort through them, see what you have, what you don't. If you can do that on your own, you can easily save a few hundred, maybe even a few thousand of dollars in attorney's fees.
Right. Yeah. And it all adds up quickly. So it's a great way to just take a proactive step, just by yourself to get started. I feel like we've already gone through a lot of content really quickly. Is there any other information that you want to make sure these women hear today, either about the work that you do or if they're about to kind of step into maybe the divorce arena?
One of the things that I find happens to women when they have suspicions about the money and it's brought to the attention of their husband, it's often met with resistance. You don't know what you're talking about. You're making things up. And one of the ways that I wanted to address that, and I say, go with your gut if you think something's wrong, but I wanted to give that a little bit more of put something concrete to it. And so within the divorce money guide, step 3 is all about the red flags. And there's a quiz there, and it's a 25 question quiz. So it'll take you a little bit of time to get through it, but it's asking about how you and your spouse deal with money issues or some of these red flags that you may have seen in the marriage. Asks you, have you seen any of these signs? And there's maybe a list of 5 things that you can check off. When you're done with that quiz, it gives you my assessment of how likely there is that there's fraud in your marriage. And I think that that's a really helpful tool for people who have been told, you don't know what you're talking about. This can't possibly be true. It's sort of that outside objective look at, are these really warning signs, or are you maybe making a mountain out of a molehill? And so I want to help give that comfort.
Easy to run away with an idea, but it's also plenty of people are gaslit, and so it's hard to find that middle. So having a neutral ground really helps to kind of clarify where you're at and, get that outsider's perspective.
Right.
A lot. So, if people have more questions, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
You know what? They can go to divorcemoneyguide.com. Or they can see me on Instagram. My handle there is also Divorce Money Guide. And so on Instagram, I give, some tips here and there about, how to look for money in your divorce or various red flags. Like I said, there's a huge laundry list of red flags. And I think that's one of the questions that I get most often is, someone will say, well, here's what I've seen. Is that a red flag? And so I like to talk about those red flags on Instagram to give people more familiarity, whether it's something that they should be worried about or not.
Yeah, those are great little pieces of advice to get during your day. So thank you. You could also reach out to Tracy on, she's a purse strings professional. So you could reach out to her on our site, pursestrings.co. And we will be here all month talking about different portions of divorce and who you need on your team and great other first steps to take. So if you have any questions, always please reach out and we'll talk to everyone next week. So thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks for having me, Maggie.
Of course, anytime. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.